Welcome to Back to the Frame Rate, part of the Weston Media Podcast Network, a weekly podcast discussing movie news, reviews, and recommendations. On the show this week, we'll be reviewing Evil Dead Rise, which recently was made available on Max this past week. We'll also be catching up on our weekly watching. Followed by our featured review. Sam and I will be counting down our top 5 favorite horror movie franchises. And then finally, our recommendation shelf segment, where we'll be recommending some more films that feature demonic possession. I am Nathan Schur, and with me is Sam Cole.
Hey,
hi, Sam.
How's it going?
I'm good. No Ellie this week.
It's a little quiet in here tonight.
I know. Our cold open this week was a clip from William Friedkin's classic, The Exorcist, from 1973. Not the first film to feature demonic possession, but certainly one of the scariest. Have you seen The Exorcist in recent years?
I have. Not recently, but probably in the past 5 years. Definitely seen The Exorcist multiple times. It's a quite effective, scary, well done, like 2 strong thumbs up movie.
I saw it way too young. I think was on, I saw probably even an edited version for it on, I don't know. It was probably on basic cable at one time growing up, and it still wasn't edited enough for probably 14-year-old Nathan growing up. But it just the image of Reagan is scary enough.
Oh God.
You don't even need to like see anything really that graphic, but it is very effective film.
It has that true evil possession feel. It's like you feel like there's a demon that's like infected the movie itself. That's why it's so scary. Yeah. Like you don't feel safe watching it.
No, you do not.
Yeah.
So, anyways, well, we like I said, we don't have Ellie this week. She is taking a week off. I think she's on a little mini break, some vacation time, which is well deserved. But you and I will hold the fort down, and we're going to be talking about Evil Dead Rise and some other scary movie franchises, and our scariest episode yet, Sam. I'm looking forward to it. So
feel terror.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. There really isn't that much that I have to share about my past week. I have just been holding the fort down, maintaining, being a single dad this past week. My wife has been on a European Mediterranean cruise, and I am just trying to keep the kids from killing each other this past week. I have almost a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, and just making sure that they're clothed and fed is all I have been able to really do.
Oh boy, I hear that.
That is my life.
Yeah, I have not done a lot this week either. I've been helping my dad. He's doing fine. He had like surgery, so he's just in a recovering place doing physical therapy. But like, just back and forth. He's at this place in Pascoag, Rhode Island, so it's way the hell out in the middle of the nowhere, and it's like it's a perfectly fine facility. It's just kind of a grim location. So I go there, I bring him newspapers and stuff, and go back and forth. But between that and just watching some movies and doing some editing on my own, it's been a quiet week for me as well. Not particularly eventful.
Yeah.
I don't do the best with transitions sometimes where like I recently will have like 4 weeks of like walks of world and travel. And like every day is like the adventure, live the life. Then I come back and it's like 6 days of nothing go by. And I hate that. I like trying to keep momentum going and going and going, but like because of the nature of my life, because it's all about self-motivation, sometimes I'll pick up the pace and sometimes I'll like fall behind, and it's all on me, as it should be. There's no one telling me like, you have to do this, you have to do that. So it's like navigating a ship, and sometimes doing a good job driving it, and sometimes being like, nah, let's just coast with the tide, you know?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
So since you did have some time to watch a few things, why don't you share with us in our weekly watching segment what you did see?
So I had a very random, eclectic watch week. One thing I did watch was The Ghost and the Darkness with Val Kilmer.
Yes.
And Michael Douglas. Pretty kind of an enjoyable movie. It's one of those movies that's not perfect. It's the concept of 2 like demonic lions attacking this like African village while they're trying to build a bridge.
Wait. are they demonic lions or were they just lions being
Well,
lions?
they're lions being lions, but the movie goes way out of its way to show them as possessed and evil, and the fact that they hunt for pleasure. And there's this scene where
Ah,
Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer go to their lair, and it's filled with like human skulls and remains. And
okay.
Douglas gets really scared, and he's like, "Lions don't do this." So they're lions, but they don't act like lions. They're like
Okay.
psychotic lions.
I will admit, I haven't seen this movie in well over 24 years. So I saw this in the theater. I saw it when it came to home video. It's been a long time. I just remember these were like super like pumped up, roided lions. I don't remember them being like purely evil lions. I just remember they were bad lions. But go
Yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
it's one of those movies that's it's okay. Like I if there's a movie that I like or if it has a certain quality that I like and I'll see it a couple times, my brain will kind of wash over the things that I don't like about it and I'll enjoy it more and more. It's just something I do. So going back to my initial experience of seeing it in the theater in the fall of 96,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's decent. It's one of those movies where it's competently directed. It's pretty good. Some shots are kind of hit and miss. It's just kind of like solid. It's not great, but I've always enjoyed suspense movies about like predators and prey. I really liked Idris Elba and Beast, and that's just kind of a genre that I like. And so it is good, but not great. It's directed by Stephen Hopkins, who has an interesting kind of career. He did Predator 2, and then he did Judgment Night.
Mm.
Then he did Blown Away with Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones, Irish
I
Terrorist.
love that film.
Yeah,
Terrible accents. Terrible
terrible. I
accents.
was just about terrible accents. I was watching some of the other night. So he's an interesting kind of eclectic director where like he did Predator 2 when he's in his early 20s. And that feels like a kid directing that movie. They're like lots of blood, machine guns. Like then he matures a little bit. He's like, no, I want to tell a story about. I got to say, from that director, for me, his most entertaining directing for me is in a movie called Judgment Night with Emilio Estevez, because there are these four guys in like a trailer. They're going out to see this like game or something. They don't make it. They get stuck in a bad neighborhood, and Dennis Leary like kills a guy. They witness the murder. They get hunted. The reason that's the funnest of all his movies is because it uses the environment so well. It's like a playground of, oh, we have to crawl, through this tunnel, or we have to crawl into this manhole, or we have to climb this sketchy apartment building and get across the roof to a ladder to escape the bad guys. So yeah, that's my favorite of his. But so yeah, I did see Ghost in the Darkness, and then the other movie I saw more in line with our horror theme is Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Wow.
And I have to say, I bumped into the end of Part 7, like the last 20 minutes of Part 7 on TV, and Part 8 was coming on right after it. I'm like, I'm just going to watch this whole thing. And
As one does.
one was 1988, and the next one is 1989. So they pumped it out right after that one.
They have to make their deadline for the following Halloween,
Yeah, for the following Halloween. And man, like watching the end of Part 7, I've never seen that movie in whole. It's a woman that has these like psychic abilities that can control and move stuff. I swear to God, the last 10 minutes of that movie looked like it was shot in one night, where they had like a big, like, China ball, like in the woods at night to light the woods. And I swear to God, it feels like some guy with a steady cam ran out and he's like, okay, you run that way. Let's get the reverse angle. Okay. It's just the cheapest, most put together. But going back to Friday the 13th Part 8, the weird thing about those movies is this is before the Scream franchise, when Scream had this kind of self-aware, comedic kind of wink tone to it. There is no self-awareness in Friday the 13th. It is flat-footed, and it is just like the most abysmal acting you can imagine. And I think to myself, guys, I know these movies are cheap and stuff like that, but can't you just, can there be like a human character in this? Another thing that was so stupid about it is that those movies, they're literally just Jason like picking people off, and the pleasure it is just watching the individual murders and like how creative they are about it. But the problem with this one is they're all on a boat. It's a bunch of like either college kids or high school seniors. They've just graduated. They're on a boat heading towards Manhattan from somewhere else. And it's not a very big boat. And Jason hitches a ride on this boat and, of course, starts killing everyone on the boat. but everyone gets an individual isolated murder scene where they scream their like guts out. No one else on the boat hears people get individually murdered. Like there's not a single scene where like 5 people gang up on Jason and try to take him. And there's one moment of hope where one kid's like, we got to fight back. I'm like, yes, finally, there's going to be some development here. Nope. They all split up. They all get picked off one by one in the most suspenseless, boring, like
so formulaic.
It's so formulaic, but it's formulaic beyond logic to the point where you're like, someone on this boat would have heard something by now. Yeah. So it's not even satisfying on a rudimentary level. Then they get to Manhattan and it gets even worse because they pull into this dock, this like crappy rainy dock at night that's like outside of the city. Then they get picked off one by one on the dock, and then they get mugged by like a mugger. It's just like endless boredom. But I watched the whole thing because I was fascinated and stupefied by how like bad it was. I wanted I watched those horror movies. Like I'll be entertained by them, but it just was like too stupid for me to be on board with, even though I was entertained by how bad it was. Like I enjoyed myself watching it. But, so those two is basically what I saw this week. That's about it. Yeah. Not much, nothing else of note or like no full films.
Okay.
Couldn't be more different. Yeah.
No. I saw a couple things this week. I watched, I mentioned it last week. I've been kind of plowing through my Billy Wilder marathon.
Oh, cool.
I got to see the next one that he directed. This was The Apartment. And it's pretty incredible that when you look back that he directed both he directed Some Like It Hot and then The Apartment back to back. Probably his two most famous comedies. Both of these are just very subversive adult comedies too, which is pretty amazing. The Apartment is about an insurance worker, CC Baxter, played once again brilliantly by Jack Lemmon. Baxter is in a situation where he lends out his Upper West Side apartment to company bosses to use for extramarital affairs, and in turn, it helps him rise up the corporate ladder. The film also stars Shirley MacLaine and Fred MacMurray. Fred MacMurray also in a great Billy Wilder film. Why am I blanking on it? The what's the film noir? Listeners will.
Double Indemnity?
Double Indemnity. Oh, I love that film so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great movie, yeah.
Yeah. And so Apartment is right now streaming like everywhere, like Prime Video, like Tubi TV, Pluto TV, Canopy, Roku channel, but it's fantastic. And it's like I said, these subversive adult comedies coming out in like 59 and 60, it's just amazing what studios were greenlighting.
It's
at this
impressive
time.
He got away with that back then. You know what I mean? And like pulled that off. Like, yeah.
Yeah. The other movie, I still have not seen The Flash yet, which is sad. I'm trying to get to it. But like I said, I'm a single parent this week, but I did get to the theater to see a movie. And I took my youngest daughter over the weekend to see the latest from Pixar Studios. I saw Elemental. So, brief plot synopsis, and here it is. In a city where fire, water, land, and air residents live together, a fiery young woman and a go with the flow guy discover something elemental. So, my comments are going to be slightly harsh. All right. It's unfortunately exactly what I thought this film was going to be when you watch the trailers for this. When I see a Pixar film, I really want to be wowed, taken away to another world.
Yes.
Yeah. I do. And this film is trying to do that, but the story they're telling is so conventional. You've seen this movie, Sam. You have. You not necessarily told this way where the characters are the elements of fire and water, but the characters, their backstories, the way the story unfolds, it's like 100 romantic comedies you've already seen.
Yeah.
I will say the animation and the look of this movie is incredible. It's gorgeous. The way that they animate the two, especially the two main characters that play the fire element and the water element. It is amazing how they animate them. It is phenomenal. However, I have some major issues with why this world even exists. And I know I need to suspend belief for movies like this. And I can do that with many of these movies. Like Inside Out. Obviously, it's one of my favorite Pixar movies. But it takes place in Riley's head. And I can buy into that. I can buy into Finding Nemo, because it's fish and they live in this world. But this movie here, it appears that this is a world that the only things that are alive are these four elements. There are no animals. There's not even versions of animals like fire dogs or water birds. It's just these four elements, and there's no reference to other elements.
So it's like a nebulous world that exists in the realm of the movie, but it's not connected with anything. Yeah.
There's this entire periodic table of elements that seem to have it's like they're not part of the language of this world, but it must be because there's huge cities and there's engineering going on. And these elements have discovered iron and steel because they build bridges and buses and boats. And this movie just absolutely just breaks my brain. And I know I'm overthinking this, but I just don't understand this movie. And the only reason why I'm thinking about this is because the story itself just bored the hell out of me. So I ended up just thinking about how is this fire woman riding the bus? Because wouldn't she just burn up the bus because she's made out of fire? So this is the stuff that I'm thinking about the entire movie. Because this movie just makes no common sense at all. So I'm just thinking about the logic of everything going on in this movie. I don't know.
Fundamentally,
this is my brain absolutely just completely dissecting this film in a way that the filmmakers don't want you to. But when you think about this, when somebody who's got a brain that just wants to think all these things through, the movie completely collapses under itself. Unlike a lot of other Pixar movies, and I'm trying to think of other ones. I don't know, but.
I saw the trailer for Elemental, and the trailer really did not do it for me. It reminded me of Strange World, which I also didn't see.
Yeah.
Or the one was it called Strange World that came out last Thanksgiving? There's something. It just looks like it just.
I didn't hate Strange World, but it's lower tier
Pixar. It feels like Pixar is struggling conceptually a little bit. It just looked the trailer. Knowing nothing about the movie and honestly having not given it a chance, the trailer did not do it for me. So usually when I see a Pixar trailer, I'm like, wow. Well, I saw the trailer for Brave. I was like, I got to see this, that's Pixar, isn't it? It is. Yeah. Pixar.
I mean, where this movie really suffers more than anything is the story. Because Pixar, what I think the great Pixar movies gives them the great hook is characters and stories that really touch people. And I look at movies like Coco and Inside Out, and even I know I sometimes I get the Disney animation and Pixar movies mixed up, but there's many Ratatouille. And the Toy Story films, there's so much heart in those movies. And in many of those movies, I am crying at the end of those. And there's not a single moment where I felt a nudge of anything stirring in me in Elemental.
Well, it sounds like Elemental, there's no emotional way in. It's like you're watching elements of fire and water ride a bus in a nebulous world. And you're like, what the hell is this?
Yes. And the crying is done mostly by Wade, the water element, and you see in the trailer this. Anyways, I'm done talking about Elemental. I found it to be extremely lower tier Pixar, one of my least favorites of all of theirs, and so I was disappointed in that. So that's that. And the only other movie I saw this week, I'm trying to get through because Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny comes out soon. I have watched Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. this past week. I don't think I need to really make many comments on that. I think the whole world has seen that. I love those movies.
Back to back like that. Like, was it fun?
I love it. Yes, I love it. And I'm going to try to get through the next two. I cannot wait to revisit Crystal Skull. I haven't seen that since it was came out on video many years ago.
Say, even though Raiders is probably the best and probably my favorite, I do really like the breakneck pace of Temple of Doom. I think Temple of Doom is the fastest paced Indiana Jones. And the nightclub and the plane crash. We go to India. Oh my God, they killed the children. Like, it's like,
well, Sam, you'll be happy to know if it wasn't, I think it was in the beginning of this podcast we started recording, I may have said I was a little down on Temple of Doom. I watched it probably for the first time in maybe 10 years, and I had a blast watching it again.
I love Temple of Doom.
So yes, I was probably a little too harsh. It's been a while, but Temple of Doom is not my favorite Indiana Jones, but it is so much fun. It really is a lot of fun, and it is an amusement ride. It is. It is so much fun.
Talking about this
and
too.
It's funny.
It's really funny. And when we see Dial of Destiny, I'm sure we'll be discussing this, but like, I'm sure Dial of Destiny is going to have like a lot of like CGI augmentation. And I really miss the grit, the dusty grit of Raiders, where it's like, there's like cobwebs on his hat and he's like running across the field and like sand is coming off. Yeah. I miss whenever I see clips of the first three films, they're all, everything is like in camera awesomeness.
Yeah.
And it has this look. And then it cuts to like Dial of Destiny and you see him like riding a horse down the street of New York. And you're like, he's maybe there. And there's like extras that are like, there's a lot of augmentation and it just, I miss the grit. And obviously we haven't seen Dial of Destiny yet and that's upcoming, but like, it's just a feeling I get, you know?
Yeah. So, well, there you go. That's what we've been watching this past week. Before we get to our main review, I just want to acknowledge one quick thing. Sam, I don't know if you're familiar with Frederick Forrest, but I saw that he passed away this past week. He is most notable for his role in Apocalypse Now as the role of Chef. He passed away on the age of 86 on June 23rd.
Oh, wow.
He was one of the ensemble on the boat out there to find Colonel Kurtz. That same year, also in 1979, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in The Rose. Film I have actually not seen, so I need to catch up with that at some point. He never crossed over into leading man territory, but I always appreciated whenever he did pop up in a film, especially in the Joel Schumacher 1993 film Falling Down, where he plays Nick, a survivalist with a very dark edge. I don't know if you remember that scene.
Wait, is he the Nazi guy?
Yes.
That's that actor.
Yes.
I love Falling Down. That movie is it's like flawed, but I saw that when I was 14 and was obsessed with that movie.
It is one of my actually all-time favorite movies.
You know, Michael Douglas thinks that's his best role. He said that in
I agree. It is one of my, it's probably top 4 Michael Douglas for me.
Yeah, that movie is just awesome. Oh God. And Joel Schumacher, it's like his best directed movie too.
I don't disagree necessarily. Yeah. So yeah,
but even though Batman and Robin was great, but yeah.
But just want to acknowledge Frederick Forrest and definitely his role in Apocalypse Now, which and I love the scene. I just love all of his scenes in that movie. He is in his lines where he gets off the boat. He's just out there looking for some mango, and the tiger attack.
He's that guy. He's the guy who's like, Tiger Man, Tiger.
Yeah. And he's having an absolute meltdown as the boat takes off. Yeah, he is wonderful in that film. So, yeah. So Frederick Forrest passing at 86.
Oh, it's the same guy. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Yep.
Did not know that. Yeah.
Why don't we move on to our featured review of Evil Dead Rise. All right. So we just heard a clip from the trailer of Evil Dead Rise. All right. So this just hit, I was about to say HBO, but is now Max. I'll never get used to that. Well, someday
I
I
miss
probably will.
HBO calling it HBO Max. I kind of prefer that. Max is like Max.
Oh,
Yay.
yeah, I don't know what they were thinking because I'm thinking like Cinemax or
Yeah.
who knows what. But anyways, so yeah, I have some thoughts on this. But before I get to my thoughts on our thoughts on this movie, I got a text from my dad because he'll be pleased to know that he's now part of Back to the Frame Rate. He also watched Evil Dead Rise, and his lengthy review is this: a true horror movie. And then my brother responded, "You get scared?" And he responded, "No, because it was just a movie." So I wanted to include that. So there you go. Dad, I love you. Thank you for your insightful review of Evil Dead Rise. But why don't we share our thoughts on this? This is the fifth movie in the Evil Dead franchise. Before we get into this, Sam, I want to ask you, what is your relationship with this franchise?
That's a really good question because my relationship with the franchise, I have seen the previous Evil Dead films and really enjoyed them, but it's been a while since I've seen that and Army of Darkness, um, which um, which I enjoyed, and I liked the tone of those films, and I liked the kind of comedy mixed with the terror and like Sam Raimi's signature style. There is some Evil Dead lore that I'm a little bit um, dusty on that I might have to ask you when we get to the spoiler section because there's some lore that I feel connected directly into this latest film that I might have missed. So this is the fifth film. Basically, my relationship to this franchise is I enjoy it, but I don't know it well in the way that I know something like Star Wars, where I'm like obsessed with it. I've enjoyed Evil Dead. It's been a while since I've seen it. I know there's Evil Dead 1, 2. Was Army of Darkness 3?
Yes, that's the
What's
third
4?
one. So in 2013, there was a complete remake just called Evil
Oh,
Dead.
okay. Yeah, I'm a
So
little.
So no, it's okay because it's very hard to follow this franchise because each movie has they're very disconnected from each other.
Yeah.
There is not like a through line through these movies.
What I really liked, especially in the first and the second one, was that funhouse crazy nature of like the cabin and like anything could happen and they'd go outside and like trees would attack them or like it just felt like they were in this horror nightmarish world that was funny and scary. And I just liked that Sam Raimi in a good way pulled off the fact that there were kind of no rules as to what would happen. Obviously, there's the Book of the Dead and like possession, but just all bets are off when you watch those films. Like all of a sudden, a hand will come out of the wall, or you know what I mean. It's just like it's wild, but in a good way.
Yeah.
From what I remember, it really has been a while since I've seen the earlier ones. Although Army of Darkness is clearer in my head, but
Yeah, definitely. So, what about Evil Dead Rise?
so just looking at my notes, in general, I would say I enjoyed it. Just reading a couple things here that I did really like. The I thought there was a good homage to Sam Raimi in that opening shot where it's like the POV that you think it's like a POV of like a demon and it turns out to be a drone. I thought that was a very like 2023 wink wink moment. Like, it's a personal drone.
Yeah.
If I had to just without going into details about the plot, my main thing was I would say I enjoyed it, but I felt that it didn't quite. Sam Raimi has such a specific style of like absurd and terror and funny and gross and violent. I thought this did pretty well, but I felt a little bit of a disconnect to the characters that were introduced in the apartment complex. And I was trying to think about what it was, and what it is for me is, first of all, the cinematography is very cool looking. It's like beautiful cinematography, but the movie is so visually set up as a horror movie that
Mm-hmm.
I felt that that their apartment building was like horror movie central. Like everything was dark all the time, weird dark lighting everywhere. So I was sort of hoping more for a contrast from their normal regular life to all of a sudden she's possessed and the craziness starts. But it felt creepy and crazy from the setup in terms of the way it was shot and the way it was looked. So once things started happening, it was good and it was fine, and there was some great gross out moments. And I thought that the mother that was possessed, I thought she did a great job with acting. And without giving anything away, I love it when it's like this multi-headed monster. Like there's a lot of cool visually things going on. I, for some reason, just did not feel the connection that I should have felt. And I don't know if it was because I like raced to get home and I watched it, but like I just felt I thought it was fine, but I wasn't like, found it hilarious or terrifying. I was like, I thought it was admirable and I enjoyed it, but I felt a bit of a disconnect watching it myself. And these are two totally different styles, and it's like apples and oranges, but like with a movie like The Conjuring, which is a movie that I love, like you have time to spend with the family where they're just having a normal life and everything is regular before craziness starts. So when the craziness starts, it feels insidious and believable.
Mm-hmm.
The world of this movie just felt nuts from the first frame, that I didn't feel that surprised when gory, crazy stuff started happening. I was like, well, of course, it's Evil Dead, so here we go. Like, it just, the ride did not blow me away. And I can't tell if it wasn't quite in the mood, if that's my fault, but I felt like the movie passed me by and I watched it, but I didn't quite latch into it the way I
Mm-hmm.
was hoping. That was my
Okay.
experience.
I totally get it. All right. So I'll say that, I did like this film a lot. I think it was an entertaining entry into this, like I said before, a very unusual horror franchise. What's unusual about like I said before, the Evil Dead films is that they've never really had a through line with the plot from film to film. Each
Yeah.
movie is kind of a standalone uh, film, standalone story. The first two sequels actually are kind of like a reboot. They reboot the franchise twice. Like the second one is a remake pretty much entirely. It's more campy and tongue in cheek than the first one, and that's Evil Dead 2. And Army Darkness, as we all know, is more of a time travel sci-fi horror comedy. So
Yeah.
it almost feels completely disconnected from the first Evil Dead movie, except for we have Ash, obviously. So then we get the 2013 reboot, which had a completely different aesthetic, a bit more in alignment with maybe the 1981 original film, but very violent, gory, and it brought that kind of a mean-spirited nature back into the franchise. So these movies have been all over the map. This film, I feel, continues with the thematic elements of the 2013 remake, but I like this one, I think, significantly more than the 2013 film. And I think it's because I really enjoyed the characters in this one. And I mean the family and the sister character in this. I think they do a very good job fleshing out the central family that's in the center of the story. The mom is played by Alyssa Sutherland, who has the three children living in this condemned apartment in Los Angeles. It's actually shot in New Zealand, but we never see Los Angeles, but whatever, that's typical.
Yeah.
Sutherland, I think, is really good, playing a struggling mom, balancing all the challenges of making ends meet. Equally great is Lily Sullivan, who plays a sister. She's been living life in the fast lane as a guitar tech. I think it was a great choice to establish this film in an apartment building and not a cabin in the woods. I'm done with cabins in the woods for a while. I think we've covered those bases, and of course, have you seen the movie Cabin in the Woods from like 2011, Sam, where they completely is a send up of these Cabin in the Woods movies where, so
Absolutely
we've done it.
that.
It's like the Walk Hard of of music biopics. We can't do them anymore.
Well, but see, and you mentioned a really good point where there's like there isn't a through line between the films. This really doesn't give anything away because it's right at the beginning. But like this kid finds the Book of the Dead. There's like an earthquake and there's a fissure beneath the
Oh my
apartment. It's like,
god!
what is it doing there?
What? First of all,
Yeah.
if there's an earthquake, there's a giant hole in the ground. What the hell is that kid doing climbing down into the earth? They actually call out that there could be aftershocks. Like that is insane. Like crawling down into like a bank vault or whatever it is.
That was what was strange about this movie. Was I agree with you?
I like the setup that was built on a bank. I think that was very cool that they did. They didn't find like the Book of the Dead like out in the woods in a cabin. I thought that was a great change of finding the book.
Yeah, that was cool. I like the characters too. For me, I just felt like the setups were really good, but there's a lot of examples in this movie for me. Again, only seen it once, and I'm probably in the minority over here because it was like very positive Rotten Tomato scores. It's mine, and I enjoyed it. It's
one
not
of the most highly rated like Rotten Tomato on Rotten Tomatoes of any horror movie in a long time too.
Yeah, in a while, and like for me, I felt that when I would see scenes, I felt almost in some ways that I was watching like beautifully done like music video setups where it's like I felt like the kids were positioned to stand here and get the perfect light on them, and like some of the reaction times were slow. I just felt this weird disconnect. But one of the most visceral moments that I felt where I actually was feeling the way I was hoping to feel throughout the movie is when the mother is like trapped in the hallway and she's possessed and she's trying to get back inside. And she's like trying to convince her, like the little kid, to like open the door, and she's killing people in the hallway. That was actually really
great sequence. That's a great sequence. And coming when the youngest daughter opens the door and she's arm coming, that reminded me of the original Sam Raimi movies as well. Yeah, that was definitely an homage to that.
I think the world just seemed so creepy and so
it was creepy to begin with.
It was creepy to begin with. So there was like when there was a hole opened up and like the Book of the Dead is there, it's like, oh, well, of course it is. This place is really weird looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know it's a totally different movie and it's like apples and oranges. But the reason I like movies like Poltergeist or like The Conjuring is because when they start with a family, life is normal for a while. And the way it's shot and the way it looks, it reminds you of your normal, regular life. And so you feel drawn in. And then when terror happens, you're like, oh my God, this could happen to me. There could be a ghost in my house. I felt a disconnect with this where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be in a situation where an earthquake opens a fissure where there is a Book of the Dead. I felt a chasm. It was like I was watching a party on the other side of a chasm. And I'm like, why am I not having as much fun with these people as I should? That's what it felt like to me watching the movie. Mm-hmm. Just
I hear you.
Yeah.
I had a really good time because I really felt a connection with the family. I cared about these people. I want to get to spoilers because I really want to get to the family and the characters and what happens to them in this movie. So why don't we get into that now? Okay, we're in a spoiler discussion for Evil Dead Rise. And like I was saying, the first thing I want to talk about is really how much I enjoyed this family here because first of all, nobody's safe in this movie, which I thought was really cool. Like when we're getting to know, I like that a lot. We're getting to know the mom, and there's these three kids. There's Danny, Bridget, and Cassie, and of course there's the sister as well. Beth as well. Now I think we as this movie goes on, Ellie gets possessed. Oh, by the way, I want to side tangent. Danny goes into the fissure, finds the book, brings it up to their room. By the way, another side tangent. I thought it was kind of cool. Danny and Bridget, I think, are supposed to be kind of ambiguous. Are they like identify as like they or they're in this movie? I think that they purposely cast some.
Yeah.
So but it's not really a thing in this movie, and I thought that was kind of cool that they some of the casting in this. But anyways, Danny opens this book, plays this record, which I thought was a great way of starting this whole thing into motion here. That is Bruce Campbell on the record,
Right. Yeah.
which is a
That,
nice little voice
that was
cameo,
cool. I got that. Yeah.
which is cool. But why do you think, if Danny is the one that's starting this whole thing, why is Ellie the one that gets attacked in the elevator? Why is Danny not the one? I'm always kind of curious by that.
I wasn't sure. I just thought that the impression I got from watching it is that he unleashed the demon and she just happened to be in closer to proximity on it, and it happened to latch on to her from where it was coming from.
She was
like,
the weakest link. I mean, I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know if she was the weakest link. It just seemed, I just feel like that entity would just take anyone, and I feel like that was the first person in its path. That's what I got from it.
I guess so. But is the entity coming from the book or coming from the hell?
I don't know. I don't know
either.
Back to the disconnect where the setup and the rules of this movie, I wasn't quite. See, I also felt, am I supposed to know all this lore? Like, I felt that there was something I was missing when I I was like, am I an uninformed viewer here, or like?
I'm no expert either, Sam. Just so you know, I've watched these movies, but I've only watched these movies a couple times each, and it's not like I pray to the Evil Dead gods and like I watch these and follow everything. So I've never seen the Evil Dead TV series, which there were 3 seasons of as well. So I'm not.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
One thing I did figure out in the spoiler thing is the opening sequence at that cabin with the craziness. Doesn't that happen after the events of the apartment and the girl and she finds it, and so that
I have some thoughts in that, and I have very, very mixed feelings on there's in this movie there's a bookend in this movie where it starts off at a cabin where there is some friends that are like at a cabin, and there is a girl that is laying in bed, and it's obviously that she is possessed, and she attacks a friend and scalps her, and then she goes out somehow after she's been scalped, and then there's a guy that is also flying the drone, and he gets attacked, he gets killed, also beheaded. And by the way, I love the opening title sequence. It's my favorite.
That was awesome
in the movie, where she's levitating off the water, and the title Evil Dead Rise comes up from behind the trees.
That was great.
That was like, if the whole movie was kind of like had that kind of, I love that. That was one of my favorite shots of the whole movie, and I got like goosebumps watching that. Like, we're in for it here when I saw that.
Yeah, that was cool. That was a great title sequence. I agree with that.
Yes, but I feel like we're jumping ahead here a little bit, but at the same time, I was disappointed that I feel like that whole bookend really doesn't have anything to do with this movie at all. And I think it's just a setup for a sequel or a prequel.
Yeah.
Because I think because this movie did very well, I think we're going to find out what happens to them in another movie, what that whole story is, which I'm not that excited about. I don't care about what happens to these kids in the cabin right now. I was hoping we were going to be linked to it somehow with this story, but we're not. They're just, one of them is just a resident in the apartment. Whoop-de-doo. I don't know.
It would help me if the lore was more intact from film to film, because I'm the kind of guy that likes it when it doesn't have to be episodic, but when one thing leads into another, I'd be like, oh my God, he used the spell in the book that they used from part 3. That spell, that curse is back. But instead, it's like nebulous.
I couldn't answer that because I'm not that avid a follower of this, and I believe, and I was reading something online. This is not the same Book of the Dead as the other books from other movies. The what do you call it? The Necronomicon. There are several of these books from different movies, but they all take place in the same universe somehow.
And the demons are called the Deadites or something.
The Deadites. And so there's a possibility these could all come together in some shared universe somehow. I don't really know. So Anyways, a couple other things I want to point out before we wrap this up. Cheese grater scene.
Yeah, that
Only
was
time I think in recent years I actually looked away from
yeah,
that, because that was so visceral.
that was ruthless. I did like the fact that the movie was really a full on gore fest. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm usually not about gore, but the way it was handled in this movie, it was like fun because it was so over the top that it was like part of its charm in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And definitely there's so many references to other horror films in here, but one of them was very blatant. That elevator filling up with blood and it comes down to the bottom floor and that spills out. So cliche. So I mean, like, we're going right after The Shining.
Yeah, that
With
was
that blood.
boring to me. The only thing that I liked was I was worried they were gonna like literally rip off The Shining, where it, like the river of blood comes out in slow motion.
Yeah.
I was glad that the door just exploded and it came out fast and they got it over with. I was like, enough with this
Yeah.
reference. Boring.
Yeah. It was like, it was so obvious. And like, I mean, come on, really? I mean, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind homages, but that was a little on the nose.
See, I also like it. This is just me, but I like it when horror movies establish rules very clearly of what the evil can and can't do.
Yes.
And in this, it's just kind of like, ho,
nothing.
Well, like, yeah.
Well, I would have actually talked about it, because I have a major gripe with this movie because the rules just seem to be like whatever. Because something happens at the end of this movie that I want to pull my hair out, because I was on board for this movie for about 90% of it. The end of this movie is really what bothers me. Once Ellie and the kids become this grotesque ball of gore, it's like all the rules just get tossed out the window.
I was surprised they all got killed. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, I know. I mean, they're I mean, I really was rooting for this family. I felt like I wanted these kids to make it. I really did.
Too.
But all the wit and intelligence of this demon are just gone at this point. Beth is able to simply like hide on the other side of a car in the parking garage. The entire film, we've established that this demon entity is so powerful. I mean, it would be fooled by something like this. It's now this somehow downgraded to the threat of like a wild animal. Like, it can be destroyed by going through a chipper shredder. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the monster
climax was like the lesser, like Ripley fights the alien. You know what I mean? It was like
it just
watered
became
down version of like creature in the parking lot.
I mean, this thing is like, an evil demon, and it just becomes like just a creature that is I mean, where it wasn't scary. I mean, it just became just a less terrifying and effective monster at the end.
It's like an action movie creature feature climax where it's like monster in the parking lot, bloody death in the wood in the whatever that was.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, that really, they had to, I think they just ran out of ideas. Like, how do we get rid of this thing? Well, the thing is, you can't kill this thing. I mean, and then they had to like
really good where it got to that point where all the voices were like dead by dawn, and you're like, whoa, and then it was like wah, wah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that was disappointing that they really had no real conclusion to no satisfying conclusion, at least for me, but whatever. I mean,
how did the girl that came into the parking lot after that, how did she get possessed? I forgot what happened. She just walks over to the car with the blood and there's like some creature piece left over or something.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, you obviously can't destroy this demon by putting it through a meat grinder, because it's already dead. You can't do it. So it's just a spirit floating around in the parking garage. So it just went to the next person.
That happened in a movie with there's a really good horror movie called It Follows that sets really good rules, has awesome rules for like 90%, and then at the end it's not terrible, but it turns into like a special effects show where just stuff starts happening, and I'm like,
yes,
but those rules were so set up. Stick to the third acts of a lot of movies. They just these days they just go balls to the wall and they get big with
Well,
special effects. I'm like, no, keep it.
the problem is when you make movies like that is that they like, we have to end this somehow, and we have to like make it, tighten it up with a little bow. And once you do that, they break their rules. And if but they're trying to make a satisfying conclusion that the test audience will like.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that. I'll admit it's
tacked on nature a little bit. Yeah.
You can. So if they had the guts to like, well, you know what? Everyone dies and that's how it goes, then but you know what? People don't like that.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Well, at least the test audience don't like that, probably, is what they said. So you can't kill Ellie and a 6-year-old, I guess. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You can kill teenagers, but
right. And I was glad that they lived, but they could have lived in a more satisfying. Yeah. You could have still had them live with a better climax, you know.
I know, but
somehow, some way. Yeah.
So, anyways,
I feel like B plus. Like I enjoyed it, but I was not over the moon. But I enjoyed it enough where that when another one comes out, I'll be like, yeah, I'll go see that. You know, yeah.
I did, and I hope that they continue this through line. I hope we don't end up just back in a cabin again. But the problem I still think with these movies, at least the Evil Dead movies, is that it's the Deadites, or at least whatever this entity is, it's kind of a nondescript, like there is no like tangible like evil. It's just kind of like, as you were mimicking before, like I'll steal your soul. Like there's no like what is the evil, and it's really about what this thing does to its victims. And it's about the characters.
Yeah, and she certainly took her time to go after the victims. Like she wasn't particularly motivated. She's like, I'm going to say creepy stuff and walk towards you slowly. You know.
So these movies, I think, is the reason why they don't come out very frequently, is because I think the filmmakers kind of struggle with, well, where do we take these films? Like that's why they remade it in 2013, and why it took another 10 years to do this is because what is an Evil Dead movie? You know, it's, you know, for a while it was, well, it has to have Ash in it, you know, or has to have a character that has to have a bunch of teenagers in a cabin. And I mean, this could have been any horror movie about possession. It doesn't have to be an Dead movie. That's the problem, is that Evil Dead is not really a thing. It's just happens
brand to be kind of slapped onto it as like brand recognition, and it's like there's sort of connectivity, but I wish there was a little bit more of a through line.
Yeah. So, well, it's been fun talking about Evil Dead Rise. I think we can close the book on this conversation, but this was I did have a good time with this. So
I had fun watching it. It was fun. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our next topic we're going to talk about tonight. And this is something I am looking forward to, Sam. We are going to count down our top 5 horror franchises. This should be fun. So we have I have put together a list. Took me a while because I thought of many horror franchises. I mulled this over all week long.
Yeah, I struggled. There's so many.
I narrowed this down. So we're gonna basically, like we've always done on this podcast, we're gonna go back and forth, starting with number 5 down to number 1, and I am really interested to see if we have any crossover or if our lists are completely different. But we'll see. How about this? You know what? I am always somebody who makes somebody else go first. I'm gonna do you a favor, and I'm gonna begin this evening because I feel like I'm always making other people go. So I will begin. So my number 5 horror movie franchise is the Scream franchise, actually. You know, am I stealing your thunder?
As is mine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can both talk about it then. All right. So we both have number five. Our number five is Scream, the Scream franchise. This has been a series of films that has, like I've said on this podcast before, has been a bit up and down for me. But overall, I have to say that overall, as a whole, most of these films are very good. Even my least favorite, Scream 3, has plenty going on that I do enjoy. I love the meta commentary of these films. They're just a lot of fun. They're inventive, and what I love most is whether or not Wes Craven is the director or the new filmmakers at the helm, Matt Bettinelli, Open, and Tyler Gillett. They truly care about the characters in this. Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, Dewey Riley. The fact that these characters have been handled with so much care over the past 25 years is the biggest reason why I think fans keep coming back to these movies. And I think these films have the potential to continue to create those types of long-lasting characters if they play their cards right. I think they have a solid core cast in place right now with the new generation. So that's my number five. Sam, what are your thoughts?
My number five is definitely Scream as well. And I would say the reason that I like the franchise a lot is because of its tone. It has really good characters, like you were saying, but it also, I like the tongue-in-cheek, self-aware that it's a horror movie and playing with tropes. Yet why I enjoy it so much is because yes, it's funny, and yes, it plays with those tropes, but it actually manages to deliver scarier spills and chills than some other horror franchises that are not as clever as it. So it has a tongue-in-cheek tone, but it also manages, I mean, it also manages to be straight up horror while poking fun at itself. Those films, for the most part, manage to achieve a tone that is very specific to that genre. And I also find the murders really scary. I mean, there's a killing in Scream 2. I think it's Sarah Michelle Gellar, is it? I think it's her. And it's like she's in a dorm room on a second floor, and it is a brutal, like realistic, awful, painful death. Yeah. And I watch it and I'm like, oh my God, that was horrible. But that's what that franchise does. It's funny, but then when it comes to delivering in the horror department, it really delivers. So yeah, I would put that's my number five because of the tone that they are able to achieve in most of them. Like you said, Scream 3 is not as good. I have not seen 4, 5, or 6, so I'm like way the hell behind. But I have a feeling that even those films still manage to carry on the baton and keep that tone going. Like it's a franchise where when Scream 7 comes out, I'm not going to be like, oh man, another one. I'll be like, yes, because I like the character, I like the world. I want to see it keep going. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So my number 4 horror movie franchise is one of the OGs. I'm going with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, not every movie in this franchise is great. I think the first film is a classic, and obviously the third one is a fan favorite because it's just completely bonkers.
Yeah.
I actually really like Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I think it's one of the best in the franchise. It has some problems. But I think the film's a hoot. You can clearly see the direct line from that film to the Scream movies, actually. The entire movie is a commentary on film franchises. Anyways, like I was saying, not all Elm Street movies are created equal, but Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger is an iconic horror movie villain, and he brings so much charisma to that role that I can't help grin from ear to ear every single moment he is on screen. And that goes for all the movies that he's in, even the bad ones. And for that, Nightmare on Elm Street gets an extra boost no matter how good or bad the film is. So Nightmare on Elm Street is my number 4.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a really good point. So for my, for my number 4, boy, I'm thinking about like switching the positions of these, but so Scream was 5, 4. Damn, this is tough. Okay. So I'm going to go with my original, you know what? No. This is hard. This cross wires
right here. We're doing this on the fly.
Okay, so, and I'm not trying to copy you. Originally I had a different one as 4, but I'm going to bump the one that I had as 4 higher up because I think it's better than 4th position. I guess I would put Nightmare on Elm Street as 4 as well, just because yes, it's Freddy Krueger. Yes, he's iconic. I do like the crazy visuals in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. I think 2 is a really weird film that I haven't seen that much, with the bus like hanging off the cliff. That's the one I saw first as a kid. But I like it because of its visual. With other horror movies, you just get like straight up people dressed up, killing people in like cabins and fields. With Freddy, you get nightmare, bizarre, surrealistic dream sequences, which I've always enjoyed. And I actually did see Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare in 3D in the theater. And that movie was like a total mess. So I guess I'd put that as number 4. It's a soft 4, but it's hard to talk about horror and not mention like Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He's iconic. Excuse me.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right. So I will move on to my number 3. And hopefully I'm not going to steal your thunder in this one.
No, it probably.
But all right. My number 3 horror movie franchise is Paranormal Activity. This franchise taps into an honest to God fear of mine. There really could be real evil out there lurking. This is the reason why I don't screw with Ouija boards or participate in seances, because I have a fear that something evil could be let in and attach myself to me or my house. And really, I just don't need that drama in my life.
No.
I think these movies are very effective. They are done in the style of found footage films. The first one was done very economically. I think it's still one of the best scariest horror movies ever made, actually. As the franchise continued, it does get more convoluted, how they maintain the found footage aspect for these films. I actually don't think I've seen the 2 most recent films, the Ghost Dimension and Next of Kin. I heard they're actually not that great, but I don't really love, but I do really love the first 4 Paranormal Activity films. I think they're really, really good. I think they're extremely unnerving. When I watch these, I had to take them in the daytime, snuggling up under blankets, because the scares in these films aren't really about jump scares. It's scarier than that. It's a type of horror where you're staring at like the darkness for like 30 seconds or 25 seconds, and you're just hyper focused on it, and like is something there, something moving, and like then while you're looking over on the left side of the screen, like a pan falls like on the right side of the screen, you just completely like freak out and jump. It's that kind of horror, and that's kind of stuff that just
subtle, and it's just terrifying. Yeah,
yes,
I agree.
Is.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's like 90 minutes of torture for these kind of movies, but I really do love it, and it's a hard watch for me, but I find them very effective, and I do think these are very well made movies. So that is Paranormal Activity is my number 3 horror movie franchise.
So for me, my number 3, and it's a little bit of cheating because there's only really one movie in this franchise that's excellent. There's some god awful ones, but I have to say, I'm going to go with 3, Blair Witch, and the reason for that is because the first Blair Witch movie, I've seen it so many times with its standard def video photography. It scares me even now because my own imagination fills in the blanks and does all the work.
Yes.
And I remember seeing it in the theater being like, what's this boring found footage, like cheap movie going to be about? Like, and I watched it and I was absolutely like riveted and terrified when you hear like rocks being clanked together in the woods. You just get the sense that the witch is out there. It only messes with them at night. They find these weird things and like symbols during the day. When they get into to that house in the middle of the woods at the end and the kid has his like head facing against the wall, I just find it terrifying. The problem with mentioning it in number 3 franchise is Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows is a disastrously awful film that I saw in college. But then there was a newer Blair Witch, like a remake, like a 2018 or something, that I thought was pretty good. It was different, but it had the scares and it expanded the plot in a way that I thought was effective. So it's not quite a behemoth franchise like these other ones are, where there's like tons of entries. But if it were to continue, I'm always on board with the Blair Witch world, because that something really scares me about that forest, and the manner in which they get disoriented when they go in there, and time has no meaning. That's a thing where, unlike Evil Dead, yes, the rules are vague in Blair Witch, but the rules of evil are vague enough that you feel it. You get the feeling like there's some type of force that I don't know. I'm on board with it for some reason. It works for me because it's not like, random special effects and things jumping out at you. There's something very insidious about it, and I always feel like the witch, or whatever the evil force is always messing with them, and is not that far away from where they sleep, and is really, really patient in delivering its evil. And the witch, just something about it really scares me. And we've never seen the Blair, like, you've never seen a shot of like, here's the witch, here's its face with its eyeballs and teeth. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's always elusive. That makes it even worse in a good way for me. So I'd have to put Blair Witch there.
Yeah, I thought about Blair Witch because I think that's one of the best horror movies ever. But for the same reason, I can't think of another good sequel from it. I haven't seen this. I haven't seen the one that came out like 5 years ago. So
that's why it's sort of hard for the franchise, because it's like you got the one movie, then you have like an awful part 2, which is like something about a pregnancy gone wrong, and like it's just terrible.
All right. Yeah. Well, my number 2 horror movie franchise is Final Destination.
Interesting.
What I will say about these films is that they are not necessarily all tremendous, but I just simply love the high concept horror of all this. And it doesn't get much better than this franchise. What I love about these films is it's just a simple premise. You can't escape death. It's coming for all of us one way or another. But in these films, death is a manifestation of sorts. Each has a somewhat similar structure. It involves a group of people, usually teenagers, who in the beginning miraculously escape a situation that should have killed them. But death will not be denied. It comes for each of them one by one. Of course, what makes these films so entertaining is the inventive way the characters meet their final destination. There are many gruesome, grotesque, and just really creative, just downright comical death scenes in this franchise. What's also cool about the death scenes is that they just subvert our expectations. The way the characters die is never the obvious way. There's always something that is foreshadowing a character's death, but it's going to be something else that is teased that we forget about, that is the kicker that does them in each one of these scenes. It's really brilliant how it's all staged. So not only is this franchise giving me decades of movie entertainment, I think it's also a handy guidebook of how to stay alive. After watching these films, you start to look at the world in a very different way. Now I'm much more conscious about crossing roads, following trucks carrying large tied down lumber. I'm wary of old exercise equipment. Carnival rides are strictly prohibited now. All the knives, when I'm not using them, go right back into the butcher block. You just start to think, but being smarter in life. So, if you watch these films, you know what I'm talking about. So Final Destination. I just love these films. They're fun. I can't wait. And there's I think a 6th one that's coming out, I think in 2 years. They've been teasing it, but I am always first in line when these movies come out. It is, I know I was ridiculed a few weeks ago for calling a movie a guilty pleasure on this podcast, but I don't care. I've been mocked for liking Final Destination films, but I am first in line for these. I love these. So
that's awesome. I got to see that. I don't think I've seen one of them, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. And they all sort of loosely tie together. And the fifth one actually brings it back to the first one in an odd way. That's all I'll say. But you kind of have to go through some bad movies to get to that, but it's kind of worth it. Yeah,
I hear that. I don't know. That makes sense to me. I definitely hear that.
So, all right, there you go. So, what do you got at number 2?
So, my number 2 is a bit histrionic because it's. I had honestly, there are some horror things like Saw or Insidious that I haven't seen, and so I feel like they could be on that list if I'd watched them. But like, so for my number two, I am going to go with the Halloween franchise, and I must say, as an aside, honorable mention, and you know, Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th, like that almost made the list, and the reason it didn't is because a lot of those movies are terrible. But I must say, an honorable mention for Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th, because those movies, there's like 8 of them. They are all incredibly watchable because all it is Jason Voorhees going around killing people one by one with a cast of like idiots.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it there's something so rudimentarily entertaining, but I had to go with Halloween because the first Halloween is a classic. I do like the newer ones like, Halloween and Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends, and I like Jamie Lee Curtis. The reason that I put that there is because Halloween in 1978 kind of started it all with that kind of like slow, insidious horror where there's like someone watching you. So because of that masterpiece, I almost kind of feel like I owe it to this franchise to put it into a near top spot because of what it did, even though it too has some really bad sequels. I remember not being a fan of Halloween H2O that much when I saw it in like 1998 or 90. I think it was 98. But it's just, it's
Halloween Resurrection is even worse.
Halloween
same
awful.
cast, I think, but it was right after H2O.
That's the problem. I think just the reason it's on that list in a high spot is because of all those killers like Jason or Freddy. Mike Myers is just iconic evil to me. You know what I mean? More so than Jason, even though, dare I say, I find Jason's movies sometimes more entertaining because it's just like plotless mayhem. You know what I mean? So I guess it would have to be Halloween.
Yeah.
But it's tough because it feels like I feel like it's a safe choice, but that's drawn a blank. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. So
Alien almost made it in there, but that's like sci-fi. But
yeah, I thought about like I wanted to keep it really like horror, and we could get into like Predator and Alien and Jaws, and I thought about these things, but I thought we got to keep it strictly horror.
Those are more like thriller, sci-fi, horror. We're doing horror,
Right. All right. If they made like 3 more Cocaine Bear movies, it would be on my list. So
I still got to see that. I'm mad I missed that in the theater. I know I'm going to like that movie.
Cocaine Bear 2. All right. My number 1 horror movie franchise is The Ring.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, here in the States, we've only had 3 films in this franchise. And actually, I didn't even see the most recent one. But I heard kind of mixed things, or actually poor things about it, so I never actually bothered. But the Ring franchise actually originated as a series of Japanese films a few years before it was remade in 2002. And those films, I actually have seen I think there's 3 of them. There might be more, but there's 3 of them, I believe. And they are something to behold. They're quite good. So The Ring started off as a Japanese horror mystery novel that was published in 1991, and it's actually a trilogy of novels. And the films Ring, Ring 2, and Ring O, or Ring 0, I'm not too sure, are definitely worth checking out. And I think they're all actually available on Tubi TV and Shudder right now. So The Ring is basically about a journalist who is trying to figure out how a way to escape death after watching a cursed videotape that seemingly kills the viewer 7 days after viewing it. So my first exposure was in the 2002 American remake starring Naomi Watts. I saw this in the theater with some friends. I thought it was a safe environment, so I thought. This movie gave me nightmares for a month. I couldn't sleep. It actually gave me a fear of my television. And Wells.
Wow.
Yeah. So some people thought this movie wasn't scary at all. They thought it was funny, that it was stupid. But I fell into the camp that this movie completely messed me up. Absolutely messed me up. I couldn't even walk in front of my TV in the dark for a month. This is how disturbed I was after watching
I gotta
this
see this. It's been
movie.
so long. Now I've got to watch it. Now I'm intrigued. Yeah.
And the imagery of this movie, of that girl crawling out of the well with the hair over her face and crawling through a TV, the imagery of this was so unique, so visceral. It is something like I had never seen before in a horror movie. Because before this, all we had was like Michael Myers and some of the typical like movie villains. There's nothing
Yeah.
like this had I'd come across before,
We've only
and
had
it opened up my world to Japanese horror, and which is much different. So, like I said, this movie broke me, and um, then the follow up, The Ring 2, not as good, but still, I thought a worthy sequel. A lot of people may disagree, but I think it is the atmosphere of that movie is still quite disturbing. And so the two American movies I think are quite good, but even the Japanese original movies, gotta check out. Like I said, they're on Tubi TV right now, and they're worth seeing. So there are 5 solid movies that you can see in this franchise. So you got to see these. It's a downward spiral into hell. Once you start watching these, it is like you just can't. It's like you feel like you just can't escape. It is, you just got to strap in and go along for the ride. It's intense. They're exhausting films, and it is my number one movie franchise. Not because I love these movies necessarily. It's just because of they are maybe the most effective horror movie that I have watched, because I think they are maybe the scariest series of movies I've seen. I don't revisit these movies much because I have to really be in the right mood.
I've got to see it. It's been so long since I've seen The Ring. I don't remember it well. Now I've got to watch it again. I'm
Yeah.
intrigued.
Yeah. And I may watch Rings at some point. I think that came out about 4 or 5 years ago, but I didn't hear great things about it. But maybe. So yeah. Anyways,
Interesting.
now you're number one, Sam.
So my number one, hands down, and this was easy for me because I really love these movies. I would say the Conjuring franchise, and I would even go further to say the Conjuring universe. That includes The Nun and all the reason I like it so much is I loved the first film, The Conjuring.
And that includes Annabelle too?
Yes.
Yeah, that Annabelle movies are in that. Yep.
Yeah, it's that world. I love the first movie, The Conjuring. You talk about being scared. Like, I actually find that very specifically terrifying. It really works with my sensibilities too, because it's a horror movie about it's a franchise about demonic spirits and ghosts and evil. It's low on the gore, but it's very, very high on very insidious, creepy, earthbound suspense that I find unnerving. And I'm a pretty savvy film watcher, but The Conjuring, if I'm at my home in Westport, Massachusetts, in the woods, and it's late at night, I will have trouble with that movie because I find it so scary that it's the kind of movie that when it's over, I find myself listening to the heating vents and all these ticking noises in the house. I'm like, what's that? What's that? It's the way it's done. It's the storytelling. I find the demonic evil, especially in the first Conjuring film, directed by James Wan. He did the first two, really effectively terrifying, but it's kind of like Spielbergian terror, where it's really scary, but it's very fun at the same time. But it's really, the evil to me feels very real, in the sense that when you watch The Exorcist, the evil feels real on that. It's not particularly stylized, more Evil Dead Rise, where it's more like funhouse evil. It's more just kind of grounded, full-on evil, where the demonic presence in the house in the first film makes its presence known very slowly. You start hearing things. The dog just randomly dies. Things aren't quite right, but the scenes are just terrifying to me. And a perfect example of that is they find this sub basement beneath their house, and they find this creepy old piano down in the basement, which is a typical horror movie trope. But the husband just plays a couple of notes on the piano, dur dur dur. Cut to later in the movie, the wife is there by herself. The kids are upstairs asleep. He's away on a work-related business trip because he's a trucker that has to like take, do runs and stuff with the truck. She's just walking around at night, and you hear those keys on the piano play in the basement. You realize it's not him, it's not the kids. And so again, it plays into your imagination where like the ghost, the evil demonic presence is like down there hitting the keys, which just makes it terrifying for me. I could go on and on and on, but The Conjuring is a very strong number one for me because of the style of the terror. It's all about the decibels of sound design being turned up very high, where you can hear clicks and clacks and creepy noises. Everything about the sensibility of those movies works for me. Even the lesser ones like The Nun, which is not as good, it's still, when it delivers the terror, it's a very specific brand of terror that I find incredibly effective. Even The Conjuring 3, not directed by James Wan, not as good, but it still has moments in it that just absolutely terrify me. So that's, I would say, the Conjuring franchise for me, because it really gels with what I find scary as a viewer, as an audience member. That's my number one for sure.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I like the Conjuring universe franchise as well. I feel like I haven't seen all of them. I get them mixed up because the titling name conventions of these, because I forget which is which and which is like the Insidious franchise or which is the, I'm starting to lose track of what is connected to what in these movies.
I feel like I might like the Insidious movies, but I haven't seen them. And there's a new one, Insidious: The Red Door, that comes out in July, and it's directed by the actor from The Conjuring. And I know this actor, and I'm like tired. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his name. It's oh God, the two people. He was the villain in Aquaman, and he was
Luke Wilson.
Luke Wilson, yeah.
But it's just the
he directed the next.
The timeline of The Conjuring is confusing to me as well. I feel like, should I watch these in the order that they're made, or go like, because I think like The Nun.
I think you can watch it in the order that you're made it, because I think that The Nun is if you just watch it in the order than which it's made, that's the way to do it. Because the nun, like the evil nun Valak, is in The Conjuring 2, and it's really scary. So you introduce it with that movie, then you go back later and find out where the nun came from. It's like I think just going in order is fine. Like it's not, you don't have to do it a certain way. Like I think.
Yeah. So I will catch up with these sometimes, because I feel like I watch these, but then I missed some of them, and I don't know if it hurts that I didn't see, because I saw The Conjuring 2, but then I think I watched Annabelle Creation, but I didn't see Annabelle maybe, and then maybe I saw Annabelle Comes Home. I don't know. It's
there's one where it's like the two main characters in The Conjuring, they like leave these kids at this house, and the kids like just have a night to themselves, and all the ghosts like show up there. I don't know which one that one was. Like,
I'm so confused by this franchise, but I don't know. I don't know if I need to like see them all just to make sense of it or not. I don't know.
I don't think you have to. I think they just. I think their line of thinking is, hey, did you like that ghost? Here's a movie about it. Did you like Annabelle? Here's where Annabelle came from.
You know me. I'm a completist. I must see them all in order. And
yeah. Oh, I hear you. Yeah, I hear that.
All right. Well, very cool. I'm glad we did our top 5 horror movie franchises. Probably something we never would have done with Ellie on board, right?
No, because it doesn't have serial killers in it, even though it could. But yeah,
top 5 serial killer movie franchises. That will be something we'll do.
She would like those. Yeah. I think.
All right. Well, let's get to our recommendation shelf. All right. So our theme this week is demonic possession movies, sticking with our theme this week. And we each have a pick, a recommendation for our listeners this week. So, Sam.
I'm going to go ahead and be very repetitive here, but my demonic possession recommendation movie is The Conjuring.
Wow.
What a shocker, because one of the characters in the movie is possessed by the evil demonic witch who has pledged herself to Satan. I've just talked about why I like it so much, so I won't go into it, but I find it very scary, very well done, and it just gets into horror movie tropes in the most spectacular way. I was legitimately scared in a fun way when seeing it in the theater for the first time. And it's creepy enough where I can watch any horror movie. It doesn't like I don't get easily scared, but if I watch The Conjuring, the first one, which is far and away the best of the entire Conjuring universe, it just gives me pause watching that movie late at night because I'm enjoying it while I'm watching it, but it's afterwards when I still have to deal with the rest of the evening before going to sleep, where I just feel like on edge. And this witch happened to have killed herself and devoted her soul to Satan at 3:07 in the morning. So whenever I happen to be awake in the wee hours, whenever it turns 3:07 and I'm in Westport, Massachusetts, I can't wait for it to be 3:08 a.m. because in that 60 seconds of that 1 minute, I think the witch is going to just come out from somewhere and rush me. So it's gotten into my head and I find it really scary. The Conjuring, thumbs up. Demonic Possession, awesome.
And it's streaming on Max right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Great. My pick this week is, we've reviewed Evil Dead Rise and we've been talking about Sam Raimi. So my pick this week is an underappreciated Sam Raimi gem titled Drag Me to Hell. This movie is crazy fun and scary. This was his follow-up to his Spider-Man trilogy. And I feel, after living in the comic book world for nearly 7 years, this was a fitting return to form, to his roots in horror. Drag Me to Hell sort of came out of nowhere in 2009. It's a story of a woman, Christine, played by Alison Lohman, and her boyfriend, Justin Long. She has this great job in this Los Angeles bank, but things take a nasty turn when one day she is visited at the bank by an old woman who requests an extension for her home loan. Christine tries to impress her boss at the bank and rejects the extension. And in retaliation, the old woman places a curse on her, threatening her soul with eternal damnation, as one does. So this film, like I said before, was a glorious return for Sam Raimi, a very gory and nasty film with practical effects. And it's a type of horror movie that, there was a mix of a lot of CGI in this as well, but it was a good mix. Lots of very fun jump scares in this. So if you like Sam Raimi for his Evil Dead films, those early films, and you missed this one, I definitely recommend you check this one out. It didn't kind of flew under the radar, I remember. So it's a gloriously violent film. It also has very tongue-in-cheek humor in this as well. And I think it's really well done. So great popcorn film. And it's available on VOD.
I've heard of that movie. I haven't seen it, so I got to check that.
Yeah, it's great, shocking, and jump scares in this. I think you would like this, Sam. So if you liked, I think fans of like Evil Dead 2 and the kind of the camp nature of that will like this movie a lot.
I'm writing it down right now. Put that on my list because I do want to see that.
Yeah. And it's kind of bright and vibrant as well. So it's not like what we just saw with Evil Dead Rise, where everything's kind of like dark and danky. It feels like they put the David Fincher 7 filter on it. So this is a very vibrant looking movie. So it's a lot of fun. And Justin Long is in it playing like the boyfriend, and he gives you the performance that you want from him in that.
Yeah.
So Drag Me to Hell. So there we go. Those are our recommendations this week for demonic possession films. Go check those out. So we've made it to the end. All by ourselves, Sam.
We did it. Holding down the fort.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to our wrap up. I'm not going to do a big outro with upcoming releases. We know what's coming up this weekend. It is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And I think we are both very much looking forward to that. So
the Rotten Tomatoes score has risen
slightly up
a little bit.
Yeah, that much. All right.
The 60s now. Yay!
Yeah, let's just keep that out of our mind. You know, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing.
I'm gonna go into it with an open mind. I'm excited.
All right. That is the show, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. You can email us directly at backtotheframerate@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at Back to the Frame Rate, and on Twitter at Back Frame Rate. If you'd like to help us out, a great way to do that is to simply share our episodes, spread the word. We would appreciate it. You can find past episodes of the show and other podcasts from the Weston Media Podcast Network on our website, and I'll drop the link in the show notes. And the other big thing I should mention is that you can find video versions of our podcast on YouTube. Is one place you can find us, and we have a YouTube channel that is at Back to the Frame Rate on YouTube, which is very exciting. And we also have our show now on Weston Media Cable Access on our public channel. But you can also find us on westonmedia.org if you go there, and you will find our video on demand page. So you can now see us as well as hear us. So that's very exciting. So that's it. The show is over. Goodbye.